Welcome back to Horace Goes Podcasting for Gamers with Pong Memories. I am Kieran Breer. So what happens when an enterprise architect builds a literal holodeck in his basement, throws out his shoulder in a VR boxing match, and uses generative AI tools to hunt down obscure Steam achievements? You get today's guest, Jack Coleman. Now, while many of our previous guests have been games industry professionals, today is a little different. Jack isn't a game dev, he is a regular, passionate gamer just like us. That makes this episode a proper, natural gaming chat about the sheer love of the hobby. In this episode, Jack, John and I dive into the twin frontiers of tech and play, using VR in the workplace, our long-term rights to the digital games we buy, and how a dyed-in-the-wool coder uses modern tools to keep the spirit of retro tinkering alive in these post-build-your-own PC days. We're still a little slow with our regular drops for 2026. John has straightened up in his new home, so it's not his doing this time. With your support, downloads and plays, we'll keep finding great people to talk to, so there will be more content for you soon. Remember, if you want to keep in touch with us, leave a comment on Jack's chat on our Facebook page, or send us a DM to our Horace Goes Podcasting Instagram account. We'd love to hear from you. The links are in the show notes. If you enjoy this or any of our other episodes, leave a like wherever you listen to our podcast, subscribe or follow the account. Even better, leave a review and share the love with your fellow gamers. A quick reminder that all opinions expressed in the show are strictly our own and don't represent our employers. Without any further admin, let's get going with the show and welcome Jack Coleman to our hot seat. Welcome to our interview for this episode. With Jack, but first of all, John is here as usual. Hi, John.
Hello.
Hi. And of course, Jack Coleman joins us. Hi, Jack. Good to have you on.
Hi. Thank you very much for having me. I've been looking forward to this.
It's a pleasure. And as I was saying, I work with Jack, but he does not work in the same place I do. We're back with an international theme. Last episode was California calling. This time it's Georgia, so we're coast to coast in America. A big time for America, notwithstanding other events, but this as we're recording is the end of the Football World Cup, which John was just telling us beforehand he is an expert in. Knows all about the offside rule.
Oh, yeah.
And what a hydration break is.
I do now.
Have you been watching it, Jack?
I have not. No, I'm more of an American baseball fan than I am a football/soccer fan. So,
no spoilers, but yes, that third place playoff was a bit of a baseball score. Obviously, we're here today to talk about video games and things around it. So let's get going. Less football, less Doncaster as well, John.
Oh. Are they in the playoffs? Are they still in the World
Doncaster
Cup?
At the World Cup?
Good.
No, they're not. No. That's how knowledgeable he is.
Why not? Jack, you've recovered from my encyclopedic knowledge of football. The first question, Jack, is, weirdly, if you were stuck on a desert island, but you had power, Wi-Fi, a video game console, maybe a high-end PC, what game would you choose to while away your months or years of solitude?
Notwithstanding that I could use that computer to actually get rescued, I think that's aside the argument.
You could do, Jack, but it would completely ruin the format of the question.
And you might be enjoying it as well.
Right. No, it's an easy question. The one game that I keep going back to again and again is The Witcher 3. Witcher 3, I have played through probably 8 or 9 times now, and I'm currently playing through it yet again. The reason I really like that game is the storytelling. It's based on novels from the Polish author Sapkowski. His storytelling is just really, really gritty. It's really good fiction. And so my genre typically is fantasy role playing games, and this is like the penultimate fantasy role playing game, with the cheat that there's actually a game within the game. There's this card game called Gwent that you're introduced to very early in the game, and it's a whole meta game on itself. So much so that they actually spun it off and created a whole Gwent card game. It's kind of like Hearthstone or any of the other card games
Yeah.
you have, but that Gwent game in The Witcher 3 is a very simple game. It's there's really not a lot to it, but with that there's a lot of complexity. And I find myself actually playing more Gwent in Witcher 3 than I actually play Witcher 3. So it's that, and just the replayability of all the different play styles. You can do sword fighting, you can do signs, or the magic system in there. There's potions building, there's armor. It's a huge game, and I'm really excited about Witcher 4. There's really no timeline on it yet, but yeah, Witcher 3 seems to be my go-to that I just keep going back to again and again.
And is that a fairly recent game, Jack? Has that been out for a while?
No, it's getting long in the tooth. I think it's
Huh.
10, 12 years old now.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. But it really holds up. I mean, the graphics are what you would expect from a game of that
Right.
age, but the mechanics and the play style, the storytelling, it all holds up very well. That's why I keep going back to it. But that's why we're anxiously awaiting Witcher 4, and we've only seen a cinematic. We really don't know what it's going to be, but it's, I think, highly anticipated. Can't wait for it to come out.
For a Luddite like me, Jack, what would be the difference between, say, Witcher 3 and, say, Skyrim?
It's not that big of a difference. I mean, most of your fantasy role playing games are gonna be this kind of the same thing, all based on that Tolkien, lore. You got your dwarves and your elves and your orcs, and there's a common thread through all of those things. All the stuff that was baked into tabletop role playing game back in the '70s with Dungeons and Dragons, which is really where my love of these games comes from. I was an avid tabletop gamer in my teens. So, yeah, there's just, slight variations. Again, I think it's all about the storytelling. Sapkowski really weaves a yarn and really pulls you in with the stories. Whereas, Skyrim has its own lore, it has its own universe, has its own land masses and political systems. So yeah, they're very similar, but the mechanics of, how the sword fighting works and the mechanics of the magic system. Skyrim is a bit bigger of a game. It's pretty sprawling, and it's built on, 5 or 6 different games that came before it. There's Morrowind and there's Oblivion and that whole thing. So totally into all those games too. Skyrim VR is one of the most immersive experiences that you can get with proper modding. But yeah, they're all very similar, but I absolutely love them all.
Well,
I'd be a real Luddite and say, what's the difference between Ultima 6 and Witcher 3?
Yeah, Ultima series I didn't really get too much into. I think I played Ascension. It was one of the really heavy PC, like your CPU was
Yeah.
literally smoking when you're playing that game.
I'm going to check it out. I think I saw Witcher 3 on Game Pass, I think. I might go and have a look and see if it's still there.
I would. Yeah, it's a great game.
Looking back at earliest memories, he started out on a TI 994A. It's obviously a marketing person's naming convention now. And were a self-confessed mall rat, paying a few dollars to play wherever you wanted for a couple of hours. How do you think that era of pay-to-play in a physical social hub compares to how mainstream and drop-in gaming has become today?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think some of it is actually very familiar. I don't know if you guys were ever into World of Warcraft. Did you ever get into end game raiding or anything like that?
I feel I should
Not
have
really.
been.
I
Yeah.
mean, because everybody keeps talking about it. So
Yeah.
you almost feel like not a real gamer because you haven't played World
That's
of
right. Like
Warcraft.
why am I talking to you guys?
That's
No,
right.
so
Everyone says that, Jack.
no, so I mean that part of it, I mean the social aspect of World of Warcraft, especially in those raiding, end game raids against the big bosses, really is a social thing. I mean, you have to know the people you're playing with. I mean, you can do some pickup groups and you can try to wing your way through it, but some of the end game content, you have to all be on the same page. So I've made some really good friends over the years in WoW, people that, all over the world that I've never met in person, but I would consider them, some of my best friends. So I think that aspect of it is very similar. Go into the arcade every weekend on a Saturday with, a few bucks in your pocket to eat pizza and play video games. Some of the best times of my life. But yeah, the WoW groups that I've built over the years seem very familiar. And I don't do the drop-in gaming like some of the popular titles today. But WoW rating is I think the closest analogy that I could come up with. Feels very similar.
You mentioned that your original heritage is tabletop and role playing games, and of course World of Warcraft is very much from that segment. But how do you feel? Is obviously there's a comparison, but is the strength of bonds and community the same as it is like with a Dungeons and Dragons group?
I think so. I think so because with groups like that, especially when you're all working together towards an end goal, you have to have a lot of trust, and you have to be able to, to count on the folks that are in those raid groups. And there's obviously a lot of politics involved, and there's a lot of who gets to be the tank, who gets to be the healer, who has to be the healer. I typically play DPS class. I like the glass, the glass cannon of a mage or a wizard that has the highest DPS of the group, but can basically stand in the corner and just not have to worry about the most of the tactics. Just don't stand in fire and you won't be fired, sort of thing. But no, I think that the bonds of friendship are very similar, if not the same. I mean, I think we're seeing that, especially through COVID, when we saw life can continue on as usual, even though we're not in the same physical presence with people.
Isn't that where the Leroy Jenkins kind of mix?
That is one of the funniest videos. Yeah, yep. He needed to get his devout shoulders, and he went AFK to get his chicken, and came in and just
chicken. Yeah,
yep, and just ran in, wiped the group, and at the end he was like, "Well, at least I have chicken."
I still want to believe that's real. I'd love to meet that man if I could.
Yeah.
So Jack, you used to spend hours changing hardware jumpers to get your PC games to run, which eventually you went down to consoles, which actually I've done for convenience as well. But I assume you're still kind of a tinker at heart, using tools like Claude Code to mod games. But do you think, or to fix drivers rather, but do you think this kind of plug and play era has robbed, I don't know, the younger generation, newer gamers of the that resilience, that problem solving desire? Or do you think it belongs in the past when it comes to gaming, just having the thing actually work first time?
Yeah, I don't necessarily think so. I think most of your most curious players will still gravitate towards tinkering, because I consider like home computer hobby clubs of the old, and even like building your own PC today is really just a variation of a game, right? You're building a PC is a fun puzzle, and I still actually enjoy doing that. The getting everything lined up and making sure everything's seated right and getting all the wires in place. So I think gamers that really like that sort of thing, I think they'll still do it if they want to. Now, back in the day we had to, because there was really no other way to get the highest end experience with gaming. And there is a lot of frustration to it, especially at the jumper level or at the drivers. Mods used to be very difficult, especially if there were multiple mods that were dependent. And now the tooling's just so great. Like in Skyrim, there's a mod pack called Mad God that is considered the gold standard of VR in Skyrim, and the community created a system called Wabbajack, which is actually a weapon in Skyrim that automated the entire setup. So you could get 200 mods installed and configured with this tool, if you had a Patreon account, so you could get the download speeds what you wanted, in a matter of minutes. So the tooling's really helping, but I think those that really want to tinker will still tinker. I think for me, the robotics space is very interesting. So getting little, robot kits and training a little robot dog to walk around the room and torment the cat and things like that. Hopefully that's still a thing for folks that want to do it. But the nice thing is, if you don't have that inclination or that patience, console gaming, you plug it up, plug it in, maybe wait a few minutes for your downloads, and then you're good to go. But no, I think there'll always be the curious folks that still want to do it.
I think you're right. I guess it always depends on what experience you're after. Because I remember when I was traveling an awful lot during the week, and the weekend would be when I'd play games. And I remember picking up a game for a PC to remain nameless. I thought I was really looking forward to it. But unfortunately, I then spent the entire Saturday trying to fix my drivers to get it going, and then Sunday afternoon I was back off again for the next week, and I was like really frustrated with the whole thing. So yeah, I think having that ability to the ability to choose is probably not a bad thing, to be honest.
Yeah, and
Mm.
that's really why I've gravitated towards using Claude Code. I use Claude Code at home. I don't use it at work, but I have a $20 a month subscription that is really, really helpful. One example, I was playing Beat Saber, and I have one achievement in Beat Saber that I don't have, and the Steam interface really doesn't tell you, how far you are from it in some
Mm,
cases. So I
Yeah.
pointed Claude Code to the config files and say, "Where am I?" And it came back and said, "Oh, you've only got 5 of the 15. And here are the ones I suggest you do, the shortest games, the ones that
wow.
you're closest with." So it gave me basically a clear plan on how to get that final achievement. And it's
Mm.
stuff like that just really handy that short circuits
Yeah.
the research, having to dig through it, having to search the internet. So it's a convenience tool exactly as you described to help me
Mm.
save time so I can spend more time in the game and less time, on the config stuff.
I could have done with that. I would say about 20 years ago when Metal Gear Solid came out, and it still angers me now. And Kieran's heard about this for many, many, many times. With one end boss, I think it's called Hypnos, you had to move the controller from port one into port two, and
Oh,
that's how
wow.
you defeated the. I spent days. But, I mean, how desperate must you be to remove your controller to a different port and to
That
think,
is an
oh,
odd
this will
gaming
help?
mechanic.
Yeah, it's like, this is going to help, I'm sure. Oh man. Anyway, I'm over it now, Jack. You'll be glad to know. I don't go on
That's
about it.
good.
Yeah, that's a really interesting idea, and I used to overlays trying to play Magic the Gathering, but I was at a conference recently where there was a CEO called Sam of an e-games company, Fnatic, who was doing a presentation about a new set of overlays that they were providing with real-time commentary that was telling you for League of Legends exactly what you needed to be doing in a particular fight. What resources you had and the right spell to cast, all this kind of stuff. It was very sophisticated in real time, so it was very impressive demo. But talking about doing the config, I needed to put a bigger SSD drive because it was my main drive, and decided to do that fix to my computer on probably the hottest day of the year so far in the evening. And you'll know that when you open up your PC, it does start getting a bit nervous when you're unscrewing the main drive of the computer or trying to get to it, because of course it was hidden behind the PSU and couldn't get a screwdriver in. It's all that stuff. It is a pest, but it's easy once you start doing it. But of course, I started sweating like every generic geek in every Hollywood film at some dramatic point. There's always some sweaty developer or somebody trying to decode. I felt just like that.
Drop of sweat hits right into the CPU
Mm.
case and shorts out the board. And
Yeah, I was worried a bit about that as well. Um, it was fun back in the day trying to build a PC and choosing all the right components. But I think one thing that people can figure now is in the game. I mean, there's so much you're talking about modding and everything as well, that if you want to tinker, there's different vectors to tinker on these days.
for sure.
Yeah.
So you mentioned Beat Saber, and you've told us that you've played that to getting close to heart attack warnings from your smartwatch. In your full sci-fi, almost holodeck VR in your basement, and you've thrown out a shoulder playing Thrill of the Fight, which actually John's talked about
Well
in the
done.
past.
Yep.
Yeah.
Rite of passage.
So how how is that experience? Doing a physically demanding thing, full body activity, changed your relationship with gaming as a hobby?
Yeah, it's completely changed. I mean, if I look at the total number of hours that I put into Steam VR, it is massively skewed towards physical activity games. I mean, that is probably 60%, 70% of what I do
Mm.
is just that. I mean, I think more than half of my weekly exercise is consumed with VR gaming. Beat Saber alone, I think they should probably market it more as an exercise tool than just a casual game. Because like you said, I can get my heart rate way up, especially in the competitive modes. They have a very
Mm.
simple online lobby where you can join at the different skill levels. Obviously I do well in the lower skill levels. I fail at the higher ones, but
Yeah.
when you're playing competitively, you really have to maximize like the scoring. And in Beat Saber, you get points for how well you slice the block. If you slice it in an
Yep.
arc and full 180 degrees, you'll get the full number of points. So you can't just casually just flick your wrist at it like you can if you're playing by yourself. If you want the points, you have to go all in, and it's the competitive mode that really gets the heart rate up. So I'll typically have like a 30-40 minute Beat Saber session where I play a few easy games just to get warmed up, get into expert mode on some songs that I know to try to get those achievements, and then finish the session in some very competitive online games. And that's really where you get the thing sweats. I have to wipe down the VR headset when I'm done. I Yeah, and to your question, I mean, it has completely changed how I work out. I used to be an avid runner. When I turned 30, the weight was gearing up, and I said I need to do something with. So I just picked up running, loved it. There's a big race in Atlanta called the Peachtree Road Race on July 4th every year. It's a 10K race, on a very difficult course on one of the hottest days in
Mm.
Atlanta. It's kind of a goal for a lot of runners in Atlanta, and I ended up doing that 16 years in a row, to the
Ooh.
point where my family was like, "Are we ever going to go on vacation on the 4th of July again?" So, COVID kind of put an end to that, age and knees, and so running now is just kind of a casual thing. We have a run for work they called the Mayor's Challenge that I try to get into every year, but no, it's shifted. Even like lifting weights, I have a MetaQuest 3 that I use some apps to help with form. It'll watch your form while you're doing a bicep
Right.
curl or doing a lift, and
Mm.
it'll help correct it. I don't use that as much, but yeah, it's VR for me is more for exercise than it is for gaming. So yeah, it's completely changed.
Yeah, definitely not the stereotype anymore.
On Thrill the Fight, have you done a full run through from Backstreet Jim to World Champion and in the same?
I haven't. No. Again, I was getting into the lower rings and getting too excited about it, and I don't have I guess the technique right. So I just end up just throwing haymakers and throwing my arms around as fast as I can. And, that just doesn't work when you start getting into the
No.
more, more advanced ducking and dodging. Just, it feels secondary just to seeing how fast I can throw my arms around.
Yeah, I think the new one. I say new. It's been out for a couple of years now, I think. There's a guy called Mike Jeffries. He was a Commonwealth British boxer professional, and he actually really goes. He actually plays a lot, and he had because now you can play multiplayer in VR, and he thought, I'm going to clean up here. I'm going to go on and I'm going to destroy people online. But actually, weirdly, that never happened. He met a couple of people who are very, very good at the game, and there's particular kind of like a Philly shell dart that people would use. It's really, you just couldn't be hit from any angle at all, and they absolutely demolished him. But I must admit, when my garage gets cleared out, I'm cracking open that MetaQuest 3 and redoing Thrill the Fight again, because that's just probably one of the best exercise experiences I've ever had. It's just amazing.
I feel like there's a challenge in there somewhere, John. Are you challenging me to
Oh
a
my
fight?
God, no!
Nope.
I think we're going that. Give me a couple of years, so I'm quite good. I'll do quite good, and then Jack,
Horace gets an ass beating.
I'll definitely bow out there. Without a doubt. Have you ever tried the online one though, Jack? Have you tried it? Have you?
I haven't. No, I only have the original version, and again threw my shoulder out. And I need to actually learn how to play the game properly. Learn how to duck and dodge, learn the proper mechanics. But on the online version sounds interesting because again, I think like Beat Saber, you probably have to get the exact mechanics right, and I could see that getting your heart rate up even more. Better health benefits. I'll have to check that out.
I think that could be a really interesting dynamic. I remember. Sorry, I seem to have derailed the entire conversation now, but do you remember when Pong first came out for the VR and you could play against or table tennis rather. You could play against anyone in the world. I remember playing these guys. I think they were from China, and that was that. That was be done forever. Table tennis, and I feel it'll be the same with Thrill the Fight too. I suspect as well.
Yeah, I imagine so. Now, I again, we're kind of off topic here, but I used to be big into online poker in the turn of the,
Oh,
in the early 2000s. Big poker fan. Have played in the, some World Series of Poker side games in Vegas. Was really into it. Actually thought about going semi-professional at one point when I lost my mind. My wife was like, "You're not doing that." Um, so a couple of things. That's one area where you actually could be sitting at tables with professionals, and there were several times where Full Tilt Poker was the platform that I was on, that they would do promotions, and you could literally sit next to Phil Ivey and get into a hand
wow.
with him and do well, because if you get decent cards and halfway know what you're doing, you can be competitive with these folks. But again, to tie it back to some of the other overlays, I actually built some basic overlays to give me basic card odds based on the cards that I've seen. What are the odds that my next card is come
Card
out as?
counting. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's harder to count cards in poker because it's not like blackjack where it's very
right.
there.
Yeah.
What the next card is. There's a lot
Yeah.
of incomplete information, but everyone else has access to the same information. They know what cards are on the table. They know what's coming up next. So it helped me. It helped me in my decision making. And then when it was revealed that the owners of the platform could see everyone's cards, I was like, I'm out. I'm not playing this anymore.
Wow.
Massive cheating scandal across the online poker world.
That's how I learned how to play poker very badly, was online with the Better Quest 2, but obviously not for actual any money at all. It was just for chips. I found it really compelling. I really, really enjoyed the experience. Really good.
Yep, it's a bit different. Online poker, they humorously call it no fold'em hold'em, because
Oh,
it's fake money, right? You're in every
right.
hand. You all you need to do is push some chips around and you can bully people. So the game does change quite a bit when there's real money involved. But
Yeah, I can
yeah,
imagine.
the yeah.
I mean, I was thinking that about what you were saying about the boxer, you know, and him thinking that he could just clean up playing Thrill of the Fight. But, the reality of a real boxer is part of that is the mentality and the willingness to take the hit, and,
Yeah.
and how to deal with actually being hit and come back from that. Whereas, you've taken that massive part of boxing out of it,
Mm.
and it
Maybe
is therefore a different skill.
maybe we could put that back in with something like haptic vests, and
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
that's all. If you really want to
Yeah.
feel being punched, if
Yeah.
that's what you're into, you
Yeah.
could certainly
Yeah.
add that back.
I think I've seen that with, I think it was one of the Battlefront or Battlefield eras where you get haptic vest and you can turn the volume, shall we say, up.
Right.
And I think people were very cautious about running out of cover into anything at that point. So I don't blame them. It looked pretty
Right.
painful. But I think that would be tremendous fun. I think you mentioned, Jack, that Half-Life Alex has nearly ruined VR experiences for you because it's been really, really good. Why is it, do you think, that so many VR experiences look a bit flat and look a bit, I suppose, less authentic? Is it because they're effectively non-VR games shoved into a VR box effectively, rather than being built from the ground up as VR games?
Yeah, exactly that. I think, corporate profits and greed and all that. Let's get a VR game out as quickly as they can. Take a flat pancake game and just wrap some VR around it. And we can even do that with just about anything. There's a Unreal Engine VR injector that you can take any arbitrary game, especially with something like Claude Code, and you can make it a VR game.
Wow.
But it doesn't really feel right because it's, like you said, it's not really ground up, made for an immersive experience. Whereas Half-Life Alyx was released with the Valve Index headset display. So it was engineered part and parcel to be the premier experience for this platform. And I actually read a lot about this, like warning me, do not start with Half-Life Alyx. Do not start with Half-Life Alyx, because
Wow.
you will not want to go back to anything else. And it absolutely is true. The immersion of that game, it's mind blowing. I mean, from the very minute the game starts, you're on this deck in what looks like a Parisian landscape, you're on top of some buildings, and like every object around you can pick up and interact with. There's cans, there's books, there's bottles that you can smash, there's a radio. Then you go into this little room and there's a whiteboard with markers. You can literally pick up the whiteboard markers and draw on the whiteboard. I mean, it's just, the developers really thought about every little detail, the sounds, the spatial audio. So yeah, they set the bar really, really high. They invented the idea of what are called the gravity gloves. I don't know if you've known the Half-Life series. They had the gravity gun from Half-Life Alyx 2 where you could pick objects up. So you have these gloves where you don't have to like lean over and pick things up. And as an aging person, leaning down and picking up objects in VR got really tiring. So just pointing your hand at it and flicking your wrist, the object would fly into your hand. And that is now a game mechanic in almost every VR game that Half-Life Alyx really made common. So there's just so many things in that game that feel missing from other VR games. Like there's little mini puzzles in the game, and they're all 3D based. So you have these globe type puzzles that you can rotate with your hand, and you put this tool on it and you try to direct the things through. I mean, just really, really creative ways to use the 3D environment. I could just go on and on. There's just so much in that game. So yeah, it has absolutely ruined me. I've yet to see anything even close to it. I hope they do another Half-Life game for the VR, but I think the bottom line is an economic problem. The VR just they can't seem to figure out how to get it to work. With Zuckerberg and Facebook, they spent $10 billion trying to solve this problem, only to realize that nobody wants VR. Nobody wants to put this thing on their head. And it's still very niche. I don't know if there's anything you can do to make it more mainstream other than the form factor of the headset. I think that's the most limiting factor.
Well, on that kind of side of things, your day job is an enterprise architect in the same company that I work in. We could be using this kind of environment in various ways in the corporate world. I'd like to hear your ideas on that. The idea of being sat there for an hour, maybe for a meeting or something like that, with a VR headset on, not so attractive.
Yeah, that's something that I've always thought there were some legs to it. Is there a way to make interactive meetings in a corporate environment more interesting? And I'm not sure there is. I think Zoom, I think is as good as we're ever going to get.
Good enough.
Yeah, and it turns out it's actually a terrible way to work. I mean, the research is clear on this, that when you're in meetings all day staring at yourself on a camera, the brain slows down after about 15 minutes and just stops responding. I mean, the camera on mirror effect really triggers stress. And it turns out it's exponentially worse for women. Because I'm worrying about what you look like, and there's ample research here, and having all eyes on you, it's just like speaking in public. It triggers this stage fright stress response. So nothing about what we're doing with Zoom and Teams and Google Meet is really good for the brain. So I was hoping there was some new thing that would come along, but we actually tried it. We invested some money in the Microsoft HoloLens 2 devices. These are essentially industrial strength augmented reality headsets for like heavy equipment, where you could have an engineer in the field who doesn't understand this equipment. There could be an engineer on the back end that, in their field of view can say, hey, point to this lever and turn this knob. And that showed some real promise. They thought this was going to really take off in, remote surgery and, you name it. And the corporate world was just going to be on fire. We ended up standing around in this cartoon world, pointing at each other going, okay, now what? I can't even show you my diagram. And it got in the way. And unfortunately, I don't think there's a better thing that has come around yet. I hope the research continues, but I think Zoom's all we got.
I guess the 3D Miro board might be the kind of thing that would be useful. Everybody, well, I suppose, getting a bit corporate, but yeah, even the Miro experience usually ends up with one person drawing on the virtual whiteboard rather than a whole lot of people round it all doing their own thing. But maybe giving people, because if you do have people around a real whiteboard, they do all pick up a pen or get a bunch of sticky notes and start, putting them up. Whereas when you're all online looking at one person's screen, it feels like that one person is driving it. Whereas if we had a bit more of a VR where you're all kind of stood there looking at the same thing and you feel like everybody's there looking at the same thing, it might increase that interactivity.
And I think a lot of that has to do with the form factors that we're using today. I mean, keyboard, mouse, rectangle screens, this
Yeah.
is what we've been using for 30
Yeah.
plus years, right? There's just no creativity in this space. I think voice is going to be a big factor going forward. I'm actually experimenting with using voice to generate prompts.
Yep.
I just got a gadget called a Prolo ring, which is a ring that sits on your index finger and you can scroll back and forth with it. You can do clicking. It's not very precise, but I think for something like if you've got a microphone to do your prompting and you have a Prolo ring to do, scrolling up and down, that could
Mm.
eliminate the dependency on a keyboard. It could, have some accessibility, impacts that might make it easier for some people to use. I think gestures and external cameras is pretty untapped. I think Professor Muhammad Ali was talking about this. Why
Yep.
did
It
Connect
did.
die? It was such a great tool
Mm.
to be able to do hand tracking, things like that. And the MetaQuest 3 has a really nice hand tracker, so much so that you can actually teach yourself piano by doing an overlay on top of a keyboard, and you can step through as the notes come at you, just like Beat Saber. So I think he's onto something there. That there's some modalities that are just underfunded that have
Mm.
proven to work, but this, if corporate America can't make $1 billion on it, they're like, yeah, why are we going to worry about that?
But then your point about the things like the power that you can achieve in tools like Claude Code make it a bit more accessible to a larger
Yes,
group of people.
that's right.
On the Gen AI coding frontier, you've looked at the idea of using your voice to conjure up environments or thought to make enemies in games a bit less predictable. But with your background, do you have concerns about safety and security? Do you see any risks when AI starts writing the code for our environments?
Sure. Yeah. There's certainly a lot here to worry about. Number one is probably the technical stuff, the supply chain risks, because a lot of these game engines are all built on the same software, the same common libraries that they all use. If an attacker can get access to one, they get access to everyone. So if a game on Steam gets
Mm.
compromised, you could get malware, spyware. They could put crypto miners on your machine. So I think that's probably the number one threat. But more specifically to your question, I think AI personas in games you're starting to see. You can tie in ChatGPT to an NPC in Skyrim and have a conversation with them, and that's fun and novel. But there could be a time where those AI personas could be convincing enough that users could actually think these are real people. And once
Mm.
you get into that space, then they could be manipulated by bad actors. They could commit, oh, I'm a teenager who my parents don't like me and I need some money, and they could be, manipulated into sending them money or to, grooming or whatever horrible things you can think of. I think that is a very dangerous vector that is unexplored and that we certainly need, we need some eyeballs on. I mean, then outside of that, there's the physical issues with VR. They can't be understated. A lot of people just can't use VR because of the cyber sickness, the dizziness and the nausea that comes from it. Honestly, it took me months to get VR legs, doing it for 5, 10 minutes at a time and just slowly immersing myself into it. Disorientation, headaches, and eye strain, those are all real things that you have to work through. Again, I think that's the problem with VR is the headset, the head mounted display is a limiting factor. If we could figure out how to get past that, I think it's gonna be a lot more approachable and maybe less dangerous. And then other things that I was researching, things like, when you're in a VR environment, you may lose the concept that you're actually in a fake space. So say you're in a
Mm.
cityscape and you step into the middle of the street and a car hits you, it's just going to go right through you unless, the programmers say, hey, you get hit by a car, you're going to be thrown into the air. If you're in VR enough, there's this concept of this blindness that once you step out of VR, you
Mm.
forget that you're not in VR and you step into the road and you get hit by a
Oh, the
car
other way
the
round.
other way
Oh, I
around.
see.
Right.
Oh.
So, and you see this too with people on their phones walking around through the city, crossing the streets. Like, what are you doing? Right. Are you really looking for a death wish? So that's a bit niche, but it's certainly an area that they're looking at, the dangers of being too immersed and then stepping into the real world, which is, very dangerous by comparison.
I do. I remember watching an outtake. There was a VR snooker game. We think Jimmy White was the front man for, and he was advertising it. One of the outtakes was Jimmy, who I love dearly, leaning in virtual reality onto a table that did not exist. I just fell straight through it. So yeah, I think that could very easily
I've
happen.
done that myself. Yes.
I have too. Yeah, there's a subreddit called VR to ER, which is pretty funny, if you like watching people get hurt in VR. But I did the exact same thing in Half-Life Alyx. It was one of the first battles that was really intense, because the fighting, slowly ramps up. And if you're on the hardest mode, it gets pretty intense pretty quickly. But after the fight, there was literally a table, and I was panting and sweating, and I went to go lean on the table, went straight through it, arm hit the floor, smashed the index controller.
Oh.
And I was like, well, there goes that. I wrote to Valve Steam and said, hey, your game was so immersive that I broke my controller. I want to say, thank you for the immersive creativity of your team. Can I get a new controller? I had a new controller within a couple of weeks. So
No.
It's that, though, maybe they were worried that you could have been writing them going,
Wow.
I'm going to sue you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Maybe. But you give them a little positive feedback that goes a long way.
Yes. And I mean, I wonder what the actual liabilities are around that level of immersion.
I do wonder if you have a giant warning wherever you look saying, this is not real. It might take you out of the immersive experience a little bit.
Well, given the warnings that we do get on things like coffee cup saying, warning, hot beverage and whatnot,
these nuts
possibly.
contain nuts. Yeah. True.
Yes.
Yeah, room scale VR is interesting because you don't want to break the immersion, but also you don't want to be stepping out of the space. So at least on the Valve Index, when you get close to the edge of the room space, this grid fires up, this kind of translucent, and you can configure how high it is, and if you really don't want to see it. But if you step out, it becomes pretty clear that you're not in the room space anymore. The controllers start vibrating and the headset starts vibrating. But yeah, if you have enough space, you can stay in the center and you never hit those edges, which is why room scale really does lead to the immersion, because you're not constrained by a small footprint of area to play.
I do like the way that the MetaQuest does it, where you kind of paint the available space in your room, and as soon as you approach that space, it will start showing you what's around you. So it kind of gently says, hang on a minute. Back up,
there's a chair
young man.
over
there. Carried away.
Watch your toes.
Oh yeah.
And also that point you made earlier about the risk of people hacking the NPCs is a slightly more insidious one, where the believability increases and the actual game publishers are using NPCs as a marketing thing, or they are selling marketing space to other companies to have persuasive characters that make you go, oh, actually, I really do feel like having a Coke now, or wherever else. Where there's marketing space, they always appear somehow.
So one of your Skyrim NPCs suddenly whipping out a Mars bar, going, "Oh, I really fancy a Mars bar about now."
You laugh, but
so easily.
But that's where everything goes, right? When Facebook first came out, they were like, "How are we going to make some money with this? What's the goal for humanity with Facebook?" And it always ends up with ads and marketing. That's as creative as anyone can get. So yeah, there is going to be a day where you want to play some Skyrim. There's going to be a dude with a Coke banner saying, "Hey, buy my beverage." And
yes, and it's almost like any social media personality goes through this transition where they start off and something makes them go viral and people really connect with them or whatever, and they feel really organic and real and whatnot, and then they start side loading something that is in fact an advert, and yeah, you could see that happening in games. Build some trust with an NPC, and then all of a sudden they're going, make sure you buy your DIY products from. But Jack, you have a great theory about how software engineering, and the three of us have been in that role and to some degree in our lives, is essentially a single player game, a single person writing code until they, as we call it, merge it, put it in a place where other engineers can see the code that they've been working on, which they may, depending on their practice, they might have been working on that for weeks and then reveal it to others. That's not good practice. But how could we overlay game mechanics, that multiplayer side of it, the fog of war, the fact that people want to see progress but can't see progress, the alerts, the rewards, that we see in games to revolutionize how teams build software.
Yeah, I really hope this is something that does take off. I think the biggest challenge is that, having talked to some folks about this internally at work, is that the context of gaming is a challenge because not everyone is a gamer, believe it or not. So you bring this up to people and they're like, "What are you talking about?" And it's like, okay, so you've got to reframe it and basically, go back to some basics. But I think once you get over that barrier, there's a ton that we can do here. I have to blame you, Kieran, for introducing me to Civilization. Had never played it before, and listening to your podcast, I downloaded
Yeah.
the latest version. Like you, it's like Major League Baseball. I have no idea what I'm doing, and there's just so many knobs, and I'm overwhelmed.
Yeah, there's a lot. There is.
But something as basic as this Civilopedia is just a
Yeah.
really cool way to organize information. Why don't we have Civilopedias internally instead of these SharePoint wikis that are sprawled all over the place? So something as basic as that is just a no-brainer. But as we start getting more into agentic coding and having AI agents that are essentially a pair programmer with you or multiple pair programmers with you, it's going to be even more important that context of work is shared not just for a single developer or even a team of developers, but for everyone in the software supply chain, product specifically, because with coding tools, it's no longer the implementation is no longer the bottleneck because we can churn out stuff faster than we ever have. The real challenge is building the right thing. And I think developers
Yeah.
are still very bad at this, right? We think we know what the customer wants, but have you ever once talked to the customer developer? Probably not. So having a common place for all the stakeholders in a software delivery system in the same place, I think makes a ton of sense. For you start with identity, how do you identify yourself in your role, have role-based access? The notion of a game map, have a product map for every product and what the deliverables are. Like you said, the fog of war, you could uncover pieces of the map as you go through the discovery process. The notion of navigating a shared space is kind of foreign to non-gamers. So maybe
Yeah.
even using games as a way to teach these folks, hey, this is a simple game. This is how you cooperate in a shared online space. Things like acquired knowledge. How do you collect all this stuff to make it visible to everyone? There's just so much in this space. Yeah, I think there's something to it. There's some research projects going on, but they tend to be again for a couple developers sharing a space with an agent to move forward. But I think if you don't include product and the decision makers up front in this, then you've come to already missed the mark.
Yeah. And I mean, in your World of Warcraft world, yeah, I mean, there are specific roles fulfilling particular duties and types, and everybody knows how to come together and be greater than the sum of the parts.
And that's the key, right? I mean, real end game, WoW end gaming is really a study in collaborative effort because you form reputations, you know who shows up, you know who doesn't. There's a coordinated learning structure. Go watch this video on this boss fight. If you don't watch the video, we're gonna know. Learning from veterans, people that have been raiding this boss for 6 months, in the shared learning, the social structures around the whole thing. I think all that's invaluable. One of the boss fights that always comes to mind is this dungeon called Zax Ramus. If you don't need to know details, but it was this coordinated thing where the floor was like bursting with fire in sections, and the whole group had to move in tandem, to be in the gaps where the fire wasn't, and they called it the safety dance. And when we were raiding this thing, they would literally put on the Men Without Hats song while this was going on, so we would all like kind of dance in tandem with this. It was one of the hardest fights at the time, but looking back, it's really not that complicated. But something as simple as that is not standing in the fire. Whoever stands in the fire gets punished, and that whole social structure and the reputational aspect of all that, I think there's analogies to delivering software that I think we have to explore and figure out. And I think it's a natural match.
Well, you've explored some highly niche, quite trippy experiences like Sound Shelf and Realms of Flow that use tech to boost mindfulness and breathing exercises. Do you think digital environments will be increasingly used as therapeutic tools for cognitive health as our generation gets older?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot here, I think that we can take advantage of. I have to get some dental work next month, and was asking them, hey, what kind of tools did you have? And they said, oh, we have some headphones, but there's been some dental practices that are experimenting with some VR headsets to help with this. And there's research that backs that, like anxiety exposure for phobias, immersive therapies with, like, starting with small spiders in a VR space and then getting bigger spiders. It's proven to be effective in PTSD for vets, explosion immersion and things like this. Pain management and cognitive based therapy, pain education and relaxation. There's a ton of stuff here, but especially things around like mobility and balance, especially post stroke patients. There's so much to unpack here, and I think it's an untapped area. You can see the research is there's a lot, but to get that mainstream, I think you run into some of the same things. How do you make it cost effective with the hardware? How do you get it into people's hands that aren't tech savvy? So I think there's a lot of barriers to overcome here. Again, the coming back to the headset modality is a constraining factor, but yeah, there's, I think, a lot here. I have a utopian dream of even robotics in this space.
Mm.
When we're old and incontinent, I'd rather have a robot change a diaper than a person, just for dignity, right? So we're going to see diaper robots, and we're sitting in our VR headsets just checking out and not having to worry about the indignity of it all.
Yeah, I think there's been work by, I want to say, University of Sheffield around this, which is for burn victims, in terms of changing things like bandages, of using VR to immerse their arms in what looks like icy water
Hmm.
in order to, and apparently they've had some really good success with it. But one of the things that occurred to me was, and again, this is out of Sheffield, or the Sheffield Hallam this was done from. I think things get invented other than Sheffield, but I can't be too sure. But they've done some work around detecting dementia in its early stages through AI and robotics. But of
Hmm.
course, it's kind of hard to scale with robots because they're quite expensive. But in terms of a VR headset, is a much of a cheaper option, I think, in terms of scaling. I think it's probably a really good theme or avenue to explore that, I think.
Yeah, I would agree. There's a really a lot we can do there. It's untapped. I mean, and then some of the other things you can do for elderly, like there's a loneliness epidemic. There's an argument that can help with some of those things. Taking some of this gets into some Black Mirror stuff, but taking someone's digital life and creating an avatar that represents them. And then there's some trade-offs here, but I could think of like resurrecting an old pet, and having a VR experience where your dog for 20 years is suddenly there, acting like he did, looking like he did. Just untapped on what we could get into. But I think we have to be careful. If you haven't watched Black Mirror, there's a lot of really, really, it can go bad real quick if we're not careful.
Certainly could, yes. Looking ahead to massive releases like GTA 6 and Witcher 4, there's a shift towards digital-only releases and soaring game costs. I've certainly seen a lot of chat online about digital-only releases. As an enterprise architect working in, the corporate software world, the business-to-business software, we're kind of used to digital-only environments and shipping software that way to our customers. But how does that worry you in terms of games and consumer level rights and true ownership of the games that we buy?
Yeah, it pisses me off, really. When Sony came out and said, "Yeah, we're basically killing the disc," that's the notion of ownership. You buy it, you own it, is older than printing, right? This goes
Yeah.
back to the days of like papyrus, right? This is Hammurabi stuff. You can't just take this away. I mean, this is I think a fundamental foundational thing that these companies, I think, are messing with, and I don't think they
Mm.
understand the outrage that will happen if they really go down this road. Because they're basically turning us all into renters, right? They want us to
Yep.
rent this stuff. You don't own the game, you don't own the film, you don't own the song. And gamers like us, we like to go back and relive. We have the nostalgia thing,
Mm.
right? And if you're renting Witcher 3, and all of a sudden, the copyrights to it expire. They could just say, hey, yeah, we're no longer holding it. So I say, wait, I bought that game. No, you were renting
Yeah,
it. Look through your
we've
terms and
pulled it.
conditions.
Yeah.
Yeah, so physical discs, physical books, I've always been a big proponent of. I've got a big closet full of old stuff. I go to flea markets and old secondhand stores, and I try to grab as much as I can just to kind of preserve that.
Mm.
Um, Losing access to things you've already bought, I think, it's gonna create a very toxic environment for some of these companies. I don't think they truly understand this. I've been reading a lot of Cory Doctorow. He's a science fiction writer, but he also leads
Yeah.
the Electronic Frontier Foundation. He's been talking about this for years, and he
Mm.
coined this term called enshittification, and that's
Hmm.
essentially what this is at its core. What can companies do to keep growing at the rate they're growing, to make products, worse and worse for customers? And you see it everywhere, right? The shrinkflation of the bag of crisps that you get. It's there's like less, but the bag's bigger and it's more expensive. So he goes into this in a lot of detail, but yeah, I really hope they change course on this. I'm not optimistic that they will, but yeah, I think we have to fight this.
Do you
It's
think there's something intrinsically different about games where in music we've all kind of accepted it with Spotify and the like, and the ease of access? Certainly with Spotify, my daughter, she's 19, and the stuff she listens to is from even before I was born, and that's what she likes. And she would never have got into that with, CDs or albums or whatever. So it's in some aspects at least working quite well with music. Do you think there's something different about games other than just the cost?
Yeah, I think gamers are a unique bunch, right? We like what we like. We want it when we want it. And again, there's a certain aspect to the physical side of it too. I remember the games used to come with a nice instruction
Yeah,
book. When my oldest daughter
big
used to like
box.
take
Yeah.
the WoW book on the bus with her in the morning, she would read through it,
Oh
and
yeah.
the maps that would come with it.
Yeah,
Some of the
maps.
deluxe edition had these really nice maps, and I think gamers typically like that sort of thing. And so having that physical disc and being able to go back to it, The Witcher 3, I have the disc. They can't take that away from me. So yeah, I think gamers are naturally going to be drawn more towards, you're not going to take this sword, you're going to peel it from my cold dead fingers. Same with the disc. So it'll be interesting to see how Sony navigates this. Even just getting a PS5 console with a disc drive on it, post COVID was difficult.
Yeah.
It's significantly more expensive. The convenience factor of online games you can't deny, right? It is really
Yeah.
nice. Like Steam with their summer sale, you can get really nice titles for $3, and I think you still want that, but for like, my WoW titles and my Witcher 3 titles, no, you can't take my disc. I'm gonna fight you on that.
I'm kind of hopeful um, that it's going to be a fight that's winnable. I remember, I won't say the name of the game because I don't think they can be quite litigious, but there was a game that came out, a very well-known game, a very well-known piece of IP, where effectively was encouraging kids to gamble with loot boxes.
Mm.
Where you would spin the coin, pay your money for a loot box, and hopefully you got a character that you actually wanted to get, and not some kind of side character that no one ever heard of before. But the community kind of rose up in arms about it, and it was very quickly removed, which is, I think, really hopeful. I think a force for good for sure.
I hope so, because you look at what's happening in the sporting world, it's the opposite, right? The amount of betting companies that are now getting into, at least, the sport that I watch, baseball, it's all over the place, and it always seems to trickle into the field, right? Are the players now incentivized to do the wrong thing for, financial gain? So yeah, it's a problem. The whole everything kind of devolves into ads and gambling. Hopefully the things start turning the other way. But yeah, that's good news in gaming that they've taken that out, to at
Mm.
least protect the youth.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a bit of that pushback on the AI front as well, in terms of
Yeah.
gamers resisting AI generated art and the like that is not really adding a great deal. So we haven't touched on gaming and retirement for a few episodes. And when you think about aging as a lifelong gamer, do you see a future where old folks' homes are packed with arcade cabinets from the past and maybe, VR rooms, holodeck-like environments that they can revisit the past, or maybe they want to imagine the future based on their life experience. What does the ultimate retirement setup look like for a hacker architect like you?
Yeah, I really hope so. That's I think the ultimate dream. I can imagine all kinds of scenarios from a retro gaming arcade with, loud carpets and maybe even a skating rink where you can go, grab a slice and play your game, relive the nostalgia of old. I could see walls of classic arcade, classic game consoles from like an
Mm,
Atari 2600 to the NES to the Sega Genesis with every variation, every controller, whether they're emulators or the actual real consoles.
yeah.
Um, I could see emulating like old school libraries from, an old 80s movie or something with a computer lab in it where you could sit down at an old PS2 Model 25 and fire up Turbo Pascal and actually type code in
Mm.
like we used to. Remember when we used to type codes, kid? This is what it looks like, clacky keyboards and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And then, yeah, all in on the holodeck, if we could figure out how to do it with, LED walls and ceilings and floors and omnidirectional treadmills. Take that into like pools, with like VR aqua therapy. Everyone's got their headset on and they're in the pool swimming around. VR theaters with, IMAX 5D experiences and haptic feedback. I mean, the sky's the limit. At least that's the
Mm,
retirement I'm looking for.
Yeah.
yeah.
Let's put everyone in their glory days and let them play the games they grew up with. Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah. No, that would be great fun.
I think maybe there's a crossover there, I think, between AI generated environments and retirement where maybe a murder mystery but set in 1980s Doncaster wouldn't appeal enough to everybody for a AAA release. I'm just saying, but maybe a
Yeah.
small niche, if that environment could be AI generated quite quickly and cheaply, would give a really interesting experience to revisit people's youths of a
Mm,
town they grew up in, for example. I listen to a lot of clearly AI generated stuff on YouTube, but it's mainly about things that I know no one else is interested in. It's like me and five other people.
it connects for you.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's like podcasting, right? So there are genres explored which big broadcasters would say, well, it's not going to make a billion people, but it's enough people for us to be interested. I think with AI generated, you can take that niche down even more. So I'll watch something like Saitama versus One Punch Man, for example, and I'll listen to that for an hour and a half.
I don't know what that is.
I
Don't
don't
worry,
either.
no one knows what that is. that's part
But
of
you
my
can find
issue
it.
with my very unique taste. But I think
Yeah.
again, you could build environments with the AI quite cheaply, which are based around your particular experiences, and you don't necessarily a AAA company wouldn't necessarily create because there isn't a market big enough for it. So I kind of wonder if there's a really interesting avenue to explore there.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that follows on to kind of the long tail of the internet theory, right? That there's something for everyone out there if you want to find it. And with AI, yeah, exactly as you described, you could easily generate that niche into very hyper personalized experiences for down to the individual level.
Mm,
And then if you get
yeah.
a group of nerds that are like you, John, you could literally create that town and like you said have a murder mystery. Yeah, I think there's a lot to look at there. It's
Yeah.
exciting.
Find them together. I mean, I guess I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing, but well, none of us are old here. But there's a certain stereotype says that at a certain point people become very nostalgic, and that's all well and good. Yeah, it's nice to revisit things from younger parts of your life, but the risk that people start immersing themselves in that and escaping there now, when there of course there has to be a balance of reality with being able to revisit that, and then of course the danger in inverted commas of people, yeah, recreating past family members and things and getting too stuck in a reality that they remember but maybe isn't healthy.
Yeah, and I think that argument goes way back, though, right? Even, in the radio days, they were saying, "Oh, you don't want to listen to the radio too much. You're going to get, you'll be
Yes.
stuck there forever." And then with television and movies and video
Yeah,
games,
it happens
that
every time.
it
Yep.
does, the
They
same
said that
argument over.
about books when the printing press came out. It's going to
That's
be
right.
dangerous.
You're all going to
These
be
books.
demonized by the book.
Yes.
And
Yes.
dice. I think they banned dice in, the old days. It's a path to devilry. And cards. Don't play cards. It's evil.
Well, that's true.
That is true. Especially Gwent.
Have you tried Balatro?
I haven't, no.
No. Oh, have you heard of it? You're looking at me in a confused way. It makes it seem like you've not even heard of it.
No.
I haven't played it, but I think it was like last year's biggest game. Maybe it was the year before. And it's just a suite of many, many different card games, I think. And it's been hugely successful and popular. So,
did you guys grow up playing cards? Was that a thing for you guys?
Well, yeah, some types, yeah. I mean, even if it was just at home and stuff. And then because mostly for having worked at Stainless Games, who were doing the digital version of Magic the Gathering, that was when I came across Magic as an adult, and still do play it on Arena online. So that kind of card game.
I'm playing it more now. My daughter is into Fall for Wing about dragons, and I believe it's fantasy. So we've now got a card game which is excruciatingly complicated to play, but she understands it very, very well, and I continuously lose that. So I think I play them far more now than I did, in the past. I think it was that kind of overlap between, do you go and play cards with family members, or do you go and play on the Atari? And I'm like,
yeah. Growing up, cards were kind of the standard fare of what we did together. Uno and Crazy Eights, and then into hearts and spades. And my parents were big bridge players. They'd have these big bridge matches where they'd bring the whole neighborhood over, and then that would lend into canasta, cool. And that eventually got me into why I was playing poker and things. So I think it's natural thing for gamers to come from, and board games. Every board game in the world, we had it and played it religiously on weekends.
We're an evolution of that with the video game.
Yep.
But just a final point. I mean, that's the VR is the extension of, as a tabletop gamer, there's still a lot of imagination around what is going on. A lot of it's in your head. And then video games progressively, comparing Ultima 6 to Witcher 3, there's a massive reduction in imagination and an increase in immersion. VR clearly stepping that up even further. But at the end of the day, you are still putting yourself in a different environment, putting yourself in a different character, making different choices than you would in your everyday life, and just all kinds of different opportunities and experiences that it's a massive door and great fun to open it up.
Yep, and an extension of, again, the storytelling aspect of it. If the story's not great, the game can have the greatest graphics in the world, but it just won't hold you. So another way to experience stories and narratives, the gaming world is just natural extension of that. And that too is something that I would like to see more of. I think there was an experiment that Netflix did with Black Mirror as an interactive watch. I think it was I forget the name of it, but it was a neat experiment, kind of like the Infocom games of old, where you say go left, go right, pick up sword, things like that. It didn't do that well. I think the cost and the distribution of it were kind of, they're trying to figure it out. But I think that's another untapped area. Interactive fiction, immersive fiction, where it's not just a game, but a collective experience with other people that you're watching the show with. There's a lot that could be done in that space too.
Been great chatting with you today, Jack. Great. I mean, so many fantastic subjects with AI and business and applying game thinking to what we do day to day, and great nostalgia as well, thinking back. It's been great fun. Thanks very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you very much for having me. It was a blast.
Yeah, it's been great fun. So yeah, thanks very much. Cheers.
Bye.
Thanks for listening, and make sure you come back for our next episode at Horace Goes Podcasting.